made. Of course, this is all pre-standardization progress where associations like 4G Americas and other groups are looking at this. So, for instance, 4G Americas just released a white paper today on our 5G spectrum recommendations, which is a basic foundation or roadmap of what governments should be looking at and the industry when they start thinking about 5G spectrum and what types of things are going to be needed for 5G spectrum. So I think there's a lot of progress. I want to make sure everyone understands out there that we're in the very early stages of 5G. I mean, definitely not ready to have anybody market this to consumers or anything like that. But I do think there's a lot of progress being made, and I think the collaboration around the world will be key to making sure that when we go into standards, that it's a smooth process. And so that's what 4G Americas is working hard on.
Yeah, it makes sense. No, not just on the marketing aspect of it. I know I harp a lot on the fact that, 5G, people start to throw around the term a lot and consumers get confused by it. But even now we're seeing a lot of companies throughout the 4.5G and 4.75G and all these other ones. I mean, obviously, they've got their own marketing angles on those things. I mean, as you guys view those terms, I mean, do you see them as constructive? Are they hindering this? Are they confusing?
I think each of the whatever infrastructure and device companies out there, I mean, they have to make their own marketing decisions on that. I mean, as far as 4G Americas, we typically stay away from the 2.99G and the 3.5G and the 4.5G. We pretty much stayed away from those types of things. We do know that 3GPP works on LTE and LTE Advanced. Those are two names that we utilize, and they're even considering other things right now. So yeah, we don't really get into the marketing battle of the 4.5G or anything like that. And whether it's good or bad, I think we'll let the market decide, because there are a lot of various companies doing different things as far as their marketing terms and terminology.
Sure. Well, that's one thing I appreciate about you guys. You guys do avoid the point terms on these things. You guys stick with the 3G, 4G, and 5G. I appreciate that from you guys. So that's always nice to have. But yeah, I guess getting into that white paper, and obviously with the main focus of this latest white paper is kind of looking at the spectrum challenges. And you guys bring up a lot of issues, and talking about the sub 6 gigahertz for more coverage, the millimeter wave for better density and capacity. It does seem like spectrum is going to be key to this whole move, but it also seems like that's probably going to be maybe one of the biggest challenges, because the technology aspects, we've talked a lot about this. I mean, there's smart people working on the technology. They figure things out, they're smart guys. But when it comes to the spectrum support, that's going to be the part where, countries obviously have different spectrum challenges themselves and bringing up more spectrum. And that's almost like a country by country basis. I know there's organizations working to kind of unify that, but it seems like that spectrum challenge is going to be perhaps the biggest hurdle really for 5G to really, I guess, get that broader adoption and broader support from countries.
Yeah, you're going to see, I think it's really hand in hand. I mean, you have to have the technology development, which is, the research and development and standardization on one side. And then you have to have regulatory policies regarding spectrum, as well as globally harmonized spectrum on the other. And they really have to have a marriage. And that's why, 4G Americas had, put out 2 white papers last year on the technical recommendations aspects. But as we looked at it, and we continue to work on technical recommendations in our consortium, but we also looked at it as well. We need to kind of put a roadmap out of what the regulators around the world need to start looking at as far as 5G spectrum, and that's what the paper is all about. I mean, as an example, when you start to look at the centimeter and millimeter wave, spectrum, which is going to be at the high band, you need hundreds of megahertz per operator. It's not like today's auctions that are sub 6 gigahertz.
Yeah.
And so we put in recommendations in our white paper that in these higher bands, make sure that the governments understand that the operator is going to make good utilization or efficient utilization of that spectrum. It needs to be in the hundreds of megahertz. Below 6 gigahertz, now that's different. We've seen that below 6 gigahertz is going to provide a really broad coverage area. We've seen that already, and that's going to be a part of the 5G story as well. So we address the low, the mid, and the high band opportunities for spectrum, and then how it's going to play into the 5G role.
Yeah. Well, again, those higher bands, I know recently here in the U.S., the FCC came out with some recommendations on what they're going to support, it seems like, in terms of those higher band spectrums. I think they're going to go to the radio communications seminar, I think it's coming up here. I think it's this year. I think it is. I'm sure you can correct me on that. But they had some ideas of kind of what they're going to look at to bring to the table as their kind of angle for harmonization when it comes to that. I guess it's got to be heartening to kind of see at least these big regulators kind of thinking about the process already, and at least having at least some plans or some roadmaps on what they want to do when it comes to those higher bands. Because, like you said, it is going to require a lot of spectrum capacity up there to make this work.
Yeah, I think it's actually very supportive community. I think right now looking at 5G and spectrum, I think it was a great first step for the U.S. government to basically come out and say what bands, higher bands that they want to be studied, and get on the agenda item for Work 19.
That's right.
Now they're making that contribution to the CTEL meeting, which is next week in Ottawa, Canada. 4G Americas has also made the contribution of our 5G spectrum recommendations to CTEL for next week's meeting as well. So I think you're starting to see governments, you're starting to see associations like 4G Americas putting forth these recommendations, and they can only help. Again, we're at the beginning stages of what needs to be studied, and we want to make sure that other governments throughout the Americas have their input as well. But we think it's a good first step what the U.S. government did for their contributions.
Got it. Yeah, and obviously, the Work 19. Sorry about that. I always get those ones confused. But
there's Work 15. There's Work 15 coming up.
Sure.
They have some spectrum items on it, but as far as the higher bands, the key item here is to get it on the agenda for Work 19. Because then at Work 19, hopefully everything can be agreed upon, and we can make sure. But we have to get that there so that between now and then we can get it studied and get recommendations from the various governments. Gotcha.
No, are you seeing, I guess, good support from the rest of the Americas? I mean, obviously the U.S. has kind of put its cards on the table to an extent. Are you seeing some pretty good support, whether it comes from Mexico, Canada, Latin America? Are you seeing at least the governments there starting to realize that perhaps they need to start making some moves on this, or where are you seeing them at the process right now?
Well, I think in the Americas region, the U.S. Has been at the forefront in looking at it, and I think if you look at the kind of the deeper into Latin America, they are very interested in 5G in the future, as far as kind of the big picture. But as far as where they are in their networks and what they want to do, they're really pretty focused on LTE and LTE Advanced. Just like realistically, even in North America, the U.S. We are focused on LTE and LTE Advanced. I mean, if you look at 4G Americas even, and we were incredibly bullish and positive about LTE and LTE Advanced.
Sure,
we're going to hit 1 billion subscribers worldwide in 2016 for LTE, and by 2018 we're going to hit 2 billion.
Mm-hmm.
And the roadmap of innovation for LTE and LTE Advanced is tremendous. You see so many features that are out there. So, Latin America governments are very much interested in 5G, as well as the operators and vendors in Latin America. However, I think right now, there's enough on the plate, as well as everywhere else in the world, to look at LTE and LTE Advanced. So,
makes sense.
But I do think, it makes sense for the governments that, start looking at this and start considering, because again, we have to get the harmonization of spectrum, as would be great for economies of scale for 5G.
And that's a great point, too, because you're right, because it does seem like that there is, the harmonization is obviously a big part of this, but also getting this stuff on the table early enough, because, I mean, people are already talking about, a 2020 time frame-ish for, the first 5G, whatever is going to come out. Obviously, we have standards first, but that's, we're looking at 4 or 5 years away from now. Obviously, there's some carriers who are even looking to push it even sooner than that, at least for trials. It does seem like, but again, getting spectrum freed up and auctioned off, or however it's going to be dispensed, that takes a long time to do. So it seems like, while this might seem early in the process, it's almost never too early to really get this kind of moving, because this is a big challenge to get this stuff freed up and out there.
Yeah, it takes CTIA just did a recent study of how long it takes, from the planning process to actually deployment. I think it was roughly around 13 years or so.
Yeah.
So you're seeing that there is a lot going on, it takes a lot to get spectrum out in the United States, and in other countries around the world are in very similar type of situations where most of the spectrum out there that's kind of easy to take out of the cupboard and put in place because no one's using it is already deployed. So now you're looking at incumbents in most of it, and then that's a longer process. So and actually that's it's interesting you bring up some really good questions, because we're going to be doing a webinar series in September on some of these same type of questions that you have on September 2nd and 3rd. We're calling it 4G America's 5G Week. We're doing 2 free webinars on September 2nd and September 3rd. We're bringing in some subject matter experts on the technical side and then also on the spectrum side to kind of go through some of the things that you just asked.
Yeah, yeah. And again, these are big topics that are going to have to kind of be worked through, obviously, and obviously, and it does seem like at least there's always these refarming efforts being done by operators too, in terms of kind of refarming their 2G and even 3G spectrum at this point to kind of help support LTE to an extent. But again, it's going to be. It seems like at some point it's all going to be rolled into a 5G deployment too. So, but again, but LTE does, like you're saying, really have so much runway still. I mean, it seems like even if the 5G, whatever that's going to be, we don't see commercial deployments until 2023 or whenever it's going to be. It seems like there's still so much runway with LTE Advanced, whether it's carrier aggregation, MIMO, different things that you can do to it to really up the speeds. That it seems like there shouldn't be much concern. But obviously, being able to kind of tie things together into a bigger package is probably a better way to go. And that's kind of where it seems like 5G is going. Yeah.
So right now, LTE Advanced is in 88 commercial networks in about 45, or actually in 45 countries. So 88, out of the 400 plus LTE deployments worldwide. So we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg as far as LTE Advanced deployments. And then if you start to go inside the standard of what you can do, where again, most of what's been deployed is just carrier aggregation. But if you go beyond that into the things like, coordinated multipoling and some of the new, antenna strategies and interference cancellation, so you can do better job on HETnets and SON, things like that. There's just a lot of kind of a long roadmap of technology innovation in LTE and LTE Advanced, and it's just going to help that technology grow around the world in deployments, as far as ubiquitous deployments, but also in the number of subscribers that are using it. There's also lots of things going on, even within LTE, to address things like the Internet of Things and so forth. So, overall, LTE and LTE Advanced are going to be around as the mobile broadband foundation for a long time, and they'll provide that foundation even as 5G comes on and layers into the technology strategies.
Yeah, I mean, are you seeing, I guess, a lot of perhaps some of these more advanced LTE Advanced technologies? Are they kind of being, I guess, thought of as kind of the basis for 5G? I mean, is there a chance that we're going to see, perhaps LTE or maybe 4G type of the development and deployments, perhaps kind of have like a cutoff point to where then carriers are just, or vendors are just saying, hey, this is now just 5G. And again, they do like the new numbers. And so I'm sure at some point they'll be like, hey, enough of this.
Everyone does like new numbers, that's right. But I think it remains to be seen, because I think the standards will start to provide that. And then you have ITU, which has what's called the IMT 2020. So they're going to put out their requirements for that. You have 3GPP, which will be release 14 and beyond, which will be working on various elements of the releases, including 5G, which I don't know that they're going to call it 5G, but also other things. So it's hard to say when it will be what will be called what. However, if you start to consider that, like 4G America's technical recommendations are about the fact that if there's things that you can do with LTE and LTE Advanced networks, or within the core network even, or wherever it might be, we should not wait to address them as 5G technologies. You should be looking at any capable technology and bring it into your networks to increase capacity and efficiency and capabilities. You should do it. You shouldn't wait to be inclusive into that term 5G or IMT 2020. So we're very clear. I mean, let innovation take its roadmap. Take its road, and it doesn't. You shouldn't be waiting at a stop sign or a four-way stop just so that you can call it 5G. But let's just do it.
Yeah. But again, though, when it gets back to it, and this is kind of what your white paper brings up, is the fact that spectrum is going to be key to all this in the long run. And until there's more of this freed up, or governments are willing to kind of, I guess, here in the U.S., I know there's an incentive auction coming up, which is a kind of a unique way to do things. If you can somehow get spectrum away from current holders, obviously compensation might be required there, but it seems like the need for spectrum is growing so much that governments are going to have to get very creative, especially in the low band, to free up spectrum to support these services.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you look at 5G spectrum, and it's in our paper, I mean, you have to address the low, the mid, and the high band, and then you also have to address things like shared spectrum aspects, which is a regulatory and technology opportunity, and then even the unlicensed side, again, which is regulatory, as well as technology. So there's a lot of aspects to spectrum that need to be addressed. And so by launching our paper today, I think we're going to add to the conversation out there for people to be thinking about and trying to be problem solvers for what will someday become the 5G spectrum.
Yeah, and for someone like myself, who I see these regulatory issues that need to be tackled, and to me, those just seem to take so long to do. But it's good to see at least somebody getting out there, at least trying to get ahead of the game here, and at least kind of push these ideas that things need to be done. And you got to get this stuff working now because again, the longer you wait, it just seems to add years and years and years. If you wait a week, it adds another year to the process. It seems like so. You got to get this stuff as soon as possible. So yeah, it's good to see the paper, kind of read through it, and get some of the details of what you guys are recommending. And obviously, it seems like operators are on board. I know you have a lot of partners at 4G Americas who are part of this as well. So it seems like companies are at least recognizing the situation and are getting involved in this too.
Yeah, absolutely. We have some great subject matter experts that are in these technical work groups that we're doing. In our webinar series on September 2nd and 3rd, they're going to be part of that webinar. So it's really the technical experts to explain and answer questions. So I think there's a lot of interest out there. We've seen a high number of registrations already for our webinar. We think the timing is right to go out there and start discussing these opportunities and try to get your hands around them so that everybody has kind of free input before we get into the standards process at 3GPP or before we even get to the spectrum processes, which would be at ITU.
Gotcha. And I guess maybe looking ahead a little bit, what's your next focused white paper for you guys coming out when it comes to 5G? What's a sneak peek? What are you guys looking at to do next?
Well, we continue to have a very robust work program in 5G. So we're continuing to look at the technical recommendations and technical enhancements for 5G, building upon what we recommended last October for our technical recommendations. So that's one area that I think you'll be hearing more from 4G Americas in the future. That
sounds great. Well, again, if people want to get some more information on this, obviously go to the 4G Americas site. You can download the white paper. I'm sure there'll be information there on the upcoming webinars as well, September 2nd and 3rd, I believe. For those as well too, so you can check those things out. But again, hey Chris, we appreciate the insight on this, and obviously if people want some more information, like I said, check out the 4G America site. But again, thanks for the time today. We appreciate it.
All right, thanks Dan. Have a great day.
All right.